Thank you, Julian, for that very kind introduction. My dad used to tell me about once a week growing up. He said, "Girl, you've been given gifts. Use them. And know that tomorrow you'll fall on your face." His point was, you'll be successful. You will. That's a given. But success isn't good enough. Use that success to do something significant, something that matters for others, and stay humble. I loved my dad, who I lost to Alzheimer's. And it breaks my heart that while I tried to follow his advice every day of my career, trying to make a difference, he wasn't here to experience perhaps the single most important thing that I've done to do just that. And to be honest, I wasn't even trying to do something significant at all at the time. 5 years ago, I came out as a leader who is gay. Thank you. And in that one moment, I became the most senior out female business executive in the world. Now, up to that point in my career, my personal journey had been more about being a woman than being a gay woman. It was more about fighting through the hurdles of being a woman who also happened to be a Democrat and an introvert in a profession filled, at that time when I started, with mostly men, Republican extroverts. I have been different my entire journey. I just always felt like I was in left field when everybody else was in right field. I bet that feels familiar to you, that feeling like you didn't quite fit for some reason. I bet everyone in this room has felt that way at some time. Well, as a woman, I didn't feel excluded for a long while. As Julian said, I was an athlete. I'd played basketball at Purdue. And so when I started my career at EY in Indianapolis, I was embraced into a man's world because being a basketball star in the Hoosier State meant you pretty much walked on water. So it was easier for me than most to be not who I really was. I even married a man and then divorced. It was the greatest diversionary tactic for the longest time. And being named to the list of the world 100 most powerful women 9 times gave me a great platform to do even more things of significance for women. So for me, that journey was more about being a woman than a gay woman. So to me, staying closeted wasn't even a decision. My private life in my mind was my private life, and I saw no reason to share that with anyone by coming out. And truth be told, I was afraid of being identified as anything other than just being a great professional. Well, one day, I'm sure some of you have heard this story, but one day our LGBT network leader in the US came to me and asked me to be the closer on our EY video for the Trevor Project, to send a message to gay teenagers who were at high risk of suicide about how they needed to hang in there because life would get better. Well, our LGBT professionals in this video would be telling their stories about how their life got better at EY. And our LGBT leader wanted me to close the video as one of our most senior, supportive, straight executives. And I said, sure, of course I'll do that. So, well, fast forward, I'm on a plane and I read the script for the video that my team had written for me from the perspective of a straight executive. And I sat there on the plane and I had thought, and I read it and I said, that's just not what I would say if I was being honest in that moment of quiet plane time. So, after a glass of red wine, I started to write. I took out a sheet of paper and I just started to write my own script about difference and why it matters. And that's what I recorded the next day for the video. My very, very heartfelt message to those gay teenagers was that they needed to feel valuable because of their difference, not in spite of it. After all, I was not only gay, which I said in the video, but I had lived an entire life of being so very different. Yet I had succeeded, and so would they. Well, The Wall Street Journal ran a front page story about my coming out. So I became about as out as you could possibly get. But I have to tell you, after thousands of emails and conversations, I can tell you that at age 52, in that one act of coming out, I made more of a difference for so many people around the world than anything else I've ever done in my career or my life. People saw me, and they saw in me in that video that they could succeed by being who they are, because I had succeeded by being who I was, someone so darn different in every dimension. I went from, in that moment, living my life in what felt like in black and white to life in full color. I had no idea how much the world and EY was not getting the best I had to offer. And I would have argued with you 5 years earlier that they were getting everything I had to offer. I had no idea what was being left on the cutting room floor. I'm thankful that more of our employees in our workforces around the world are feeling free to be who they really are. I encourage you to encourage them. Nobody should have to live their life in black and white, because if they are, we're not getting the best of them. It is just so true that difference matters, and everyone is different. Well, that was the message that I believed those kids needed to hear. But in delivering that message, I had suddenly become the most senior out female business executive in the world. And with that came this overwhelming sense of responsibility. It was like a sense of duty, just a real sense of duty to use that platform to try to drive further change. Not just on LGBT inclusion, but on inclusion of all differences, and what being an inclusive leader really takes. We all have platforms, everyone in this room. Sometimes we stumble onto new ones. I think of Rosa Parks. Simply by refusing to relinquish her seat and move to the back of the bus, she created an enormous platform for change. Or Malala, an outspoken advocate for education in Pakistan, who survived that Taliban assassination attempt on her life to go on to receive a Nobel Peace Prize. She used her platform to tell her story, not because it was unique, but because it wasn't unique. Rosa and Malala had platforms, and they recognized them, and they chose to use them. What we do with our platform is important. That's what my dad meant, I realized, in going from success to significance. I've used my platform to try to stay very visible as a role model, oftentimes with my wife, who I actually met by coming out. That's a story for another day, over a glass of wine. We try, though. We do try around the world, when possible, to be visible together, to show people that we're normal. It's transforming to spend time with people and leaders who know us, who respect us, who just always assumed we were straight. They realize that we're the same people today that they knew yesterday. I've also tried to work behind the scenes at Davos, to pull companies, many in this room, together to compare and to coordinate our LGBT inclusion efforts, and to finally push LGBT inclusion onto the main stage in front of world leaders in Davos. I've also tried to write very openly. For instance, after the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, I wrote about the need for our multinational workplace to be a safe space, because no one in the LGBT community felt safe that day, anywhere in the world. Or I wrote to the governor of Indiana in my home state about its misguided religious freedom bill a few years ago, just trying to inspire others to consider the same things. I want to share with you something that might be relevant to you that I've experienced these past few years, particularly in my work with other senior out leaders. There's a difference in what I've experienced. There's a difference between senior out role models and executives who are just simply out. and doing their job well. Oftentimes, executives who are out and just doing their job, they do it well, but they aren't using their platform. Those who understand the platform that they have to make a bigger difference, to be a role model, to be visible, and to use their voice to drive change, they actually have far greater impact and are, in my experience, actually more effective in their day jobs as well. They just recognize their platform as a role model, and they use it. Think about your own organizations. Think about people that use the platform that they have to make a difference, and then those who just simply do their jobs. Both are important, but the impact of the former can be far greater than the impact of the latter. Let me give you a personal example. About 15 years ago, I was out to dinner one night with a friend, just chatting away as we always did at our periodic check-ins, and she looked at me across the table and she said, "You know, you don't do enough for women." I was really ticked. I was. Because at the time I was mentoring as many women as I could possibly mentor. I felt like I couldn't do any more, but I realized overnight as I thought about it that she was right. She was absolutely right. I was the global vice chair of public policy at EY, and I interacted with governments all over the world, and I wasn't using that platform to influence policy, to help empower women around the world, to help influence cultures and change environments, and make change, not for thousands, not just for the few that I mentored. I wasn't paying attention to the power of my platform. Last thing I want to share, as Julian mentioned, recently I've actually received some very humbling honors. The Theodore Roosevelt Award for the NCAA, which, as Julian mentioned, is their highest honor to a former student athlete that's gone on to do things in their minds of national significance. And just last month, I got an honorary doctorate from Indiana University, being a Purdue grad. And I didn't even have to give the commencement speech, so it was nice. But with both of those, I have to tell you, I really took a deep dive because I found myself asking, really? Really? Why me? And as I dug into each, I realized it wasn't about a lifetime of trying to make a difference. It wasn't about that at all. It was more about that one single message to gay teenagers. Because in doing that, I risked my platform of success to do the right thing for the right reason. What most people don't know is that after I recorded that Trevor Project video, it actually wasn't made public for about a month. Only our LGBT leader at EY knew that it was in the can and knew what was on it. She sat in my office or called me every day for a month, asking whether I was sure I wanted to go through with it. Had I really considered the consequences, some of which could be good, but others which were probably going to be bad. My former partner in life begged me not to go through with it. We almost shattered our relationship over the weekend before it became public. She was convinced I was going to be ostracized and a litany of other bad things were going to follow. But I have to tell you, I just never wavered. I believed in my message to those gay teenagers, and that's all that mattered to me at the time, that they were valuable because of their difference, not in spite of it. And it was an authentic message branded into my soul from my own lifetime of being so different. I was and I am so thankful for an EY culture that totally embraced me and has from day one, and I'm here 36 years later. And yet I remain confused by a world that tries to make me feel less welcome, as they do everybody in this room. Delivering that message to those gay teenagers was far more important to me than thinking through the consequence of coming out to deliver the message. And then, instead of being booed and judged a hypocrite or a coward, which is what I thought I was going to be judged, I thought I would be booed, I thought I'd be judged a hypocrite or a coward for having stayed closeted for 52 years of my life. Much to my surprise, I was embraced and seemingly handed an entirely new platform to make more of a difference than I ever could have imagined. The NCAA and IU acknowledged the power of that message. Difference matters and everyone is different. Because that's what they were trying to send. They were trying to send in acknowledging me their own message, that that's what they believe, that that's what they stand for. Inclusion matters to them. Well, right now, and we heard a lot about it on the panels this morning, in this very uncertain time, when technology is displacing jobs, security concerns are real, and people are trending toward nationalism against the inevitable pull of globalization, there has never been a more important time for us, for you, and our multinational workplaces. Never been a more important time. We have platforms that can be such great agents for change. Why? Our multinational workplaces can be safe spaces for dialogue about difference. They can be innovative environments where differences are celebrated and great results accomplished because of differences, not in spite of them. They can have great cultures that make what goes on within our four walls of our workplaces a great place to work for all, everywhere in the world. We can't control a country's laws or a country's culture, but we can control what goes on within the four walls of our workplace. And our employees, your employees, go home at night and they come back in the morning. And as they ebb and flow back and forth, I am ever hopeful that together we can over time change communities and make the world a great place to live for all. My hope is that we, everyone in this room, use the platforms that you have as the leaders of multinational corporations to make a difference every day, wherever we can. Because if we don't, who will? Thank you.